Hi everyone, welcome to the Superhuman Switch, the mind, body, business empowering podcast guaranteed to switch your superhuman levels on. I'm your host, Saf. Today I'm joined with Andrew Stotter Brooks. Andrew is an experienced and passionate leader in the field of self-development and learning, and having spent over 30 years dedicated to helping others to achieve their full potential. Andrew is the Vice President of Learning and Development for Etihad Aviation Group, and he is recognized as one of the top leaders in HR, ranking first in the top 10 for 2023. Andrew, it's great to have you.
Saf, it's an absolute honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be talking to you today.
Amazing, and of course, thank you very much for coming all the way from Abu Dhabi. I know it's rainy weather.
There's a few puddles out there.
Yeah, it is
unusual for Dubai.
Surprisingly, I enjoy it because I miss rain, especially that when you spend some time in the summer here, you miss kind of like a little bit of cold weather.
Yeah, we went to just before the end of the year this year. Went to Brussels with my family, and we specifically went for cold, and it was -7 for 5 days. I have to say that on the 5th day, I was kind of thinking, I think I've had enough now of cold. Let's get back to the sunny climes.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Sometimes we have this kind of trip just to get away from this weather. But so far so good. I really enjoy it. So Andrew, I've been going through, of course, your experience in the learning and development, and it's really fascinating that you've been in the field for almost more than 30 years.
I'm embarrassed. It's scary.
It's an experience, especially what's happening these days. I will start with just to give a little bit of your perspective about the learning and development. What do learning and development means to Andrew?
I suppose fundamentally it's about trying to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's the most important thing for me. It's about trying to encourage others to take sort of responsibility for their own personal growth. I suppose most people learn from experience. They learn from kind of like doing things, and for me, it's just trying to explain and perhaps share some of my experience. I was at another meeting recently, and I'm kind of Generation X now, so I'm a kind of an old guy, rapidly approaching 60, and I suppose I want to do is just trying to share some of my experiences through life.
Okay.
Just helping people be slightly better. Trying to keep it really human. I talk a lot about that huge difference between human doing and human being, and it's about the more that we can connect at a human level and be as opposed to just do. I think we're much more impactful, much more effective. And I always say to people, it's really genuinely about how we help. You know, people don't care how much we know until they know how much we care. So we always lead with the care, and that's really, really important. So yeah, it's just about trying to help other people, trying to share some information, just trying to make. Just trying to encourage people to be a bit more authentic, a bit more human in their interactions, really.
That's really interesting to look into it this way. And when did you discover that this is basically the passion and the path that you're following now?
Well, it's a strange story because I actually fell into it. If I'm honest, I was working in running big restaurants and big hotels.
Okay.
Back end of sort of like almost 2000s, late 1990s, and what effectively happened was I decided that running hotels and restaurants probably wasn't the future. I had my first child, Georgia, and I'd got a job working in a kind of big country club somewhere in the UK in Berkshire, and quite a famous country club, but we won't go there today. And on my very first day, it was a bit of a disaster, really, because you don't really want to hear first day of a new job. Kind of had a mortgage, had a new baby, and the owner of my new employer, that company, he sat me down and he said, kind of bit of bad news. The man that basically you're replacing has decided not to leave us. So he's kind of like he's going to be staying on, and so I was obviously quite startled by that conversation. And then I said, well, how does that impact me? Because it's obviously my first day of work. You don't want to hear that on your first day of work. And he said, quite simply, well, we're going to make you head of training, head of learning.
Okay.
Right? So I remember looking at him going, you got the wrong bloke. He's like, you've got the wrong bloke. And my initial thought was, well, actually, you need a job. You need to stay. You need to stay employed. So let's kind of see how that goes. And then whilst I'm doing that, then I will effectively try to get back to where I'm more comfortable: operations, hotel, restaurants, hospitality. And what effectively happened was I actually found that I was quite good at it.
Okay.
So I'm saying that I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing that, and I enjoyed speaking and listening to people and helping people. And I spent 7 years. We actually opened another 70 clubs during the next 7 years.
Amazing.
And that's really how I kind of got my journey started. So I think one of the benefits of me coming out of operations, so I ran extremely big hotels and I ran very, very large successful restaurants in the early part of my career. So I was very operationally focused. And when I then moved out of operations into a more learning and development space, it gave me a really great insight into how operations worked.
Okay.
So since then, I've obviously worked in lots of different sectors: financial, banking, cruise ships, coffee. We were discussing coffee earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
So lots of sort of retail. So I've worked, and obviously more latterly aviation.
Okay.
But it's quite interesting. But I think having an operational head and then using some hard earned experience through sort of learning development processes and procedures and just trying to help people makes you much more effective. I think it's not a criticism, and wouldn't dream of judging anybody, but I would say that if you only stay in one particular field and you move in straight into learning and development from university or from college, and then you go into that kind of field and you've not really got any solid operational experience behind you, it's quite challenging. You just don't see. Everything's about perspectives, right? It's about seeing different views and helping people in the most effective way. So just never be scared of taking a chance. Never be scared of trying to learn something new. For me, I'm a huge juggler. I spent a lot of time when I teach, probably in my career, maybe upward of 10,000 people how to juggle.
Amazing.
And the reason that we talk about, I love juggling, and the reason I'm so sort of passionate about juggling, apart from, gosh, in a very early part of my life, I used to perform in Covent Garden, so juggling fire and chainsaws and that kind of stuff, and unicycle of death and that kind of thing. So I suppose I had a kind of like a latent talent for performing, which obviously has come in quite useful over the last 30 years. But that is just juggling. That methodology applies pretty much in absolutely everything we try to do.
I cannot agree more.
So when we're trying to learn something, it doesn't matter whatever it is, it's not easy to do it. And I was chatting to a team member yesterday about this, and there's that whole kind of piece around experience and knowledge, and we can give knowledge to people as much as we want. Knowledge is the easiest thing. For me, knowledge is very simple.
Especially these days, you have abundance of knowledge.
You have tons of it. You have YouTube, you have Google, you have countless thousands and thousands of books and references and podcasts.
Exactly.
Loads of knowledge out there. The challenge is that it's taking that knowledge and actually using that knowledge. And what I think we need to be thinking about, and there is a video, so you can kind of see me. But I always think about these sort of two dimensions. You've got the knowledge dimension here, and you've got the experience dimension here. If I give you too much experience, and I kind of put you in a kind of dangerous place, you're going to learn really fast.
True.
Yeah. Trust me, you will learn really fast.
Faster and more
but there's a high risk. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I need to be trying to think about is, how do I give you knowledge and actually give you the opportunity to apply the knowledge through experience? Because if I do that in gradual steps, what actually happens is it's a very rapid learning process. If you think about someone like Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about those sort of 10,000 hours of learning to be able to master something. Actually,
This is Danny, because I was reading his book. I always refer to it. It's like,
I mean, Gladwell's amazing. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell to me is just an absolute icon, hero of mine.
Absolutely.
There's some brilliant books, but he, that kind of 10,000 hours to be an expert, or to master something. But you can significantly, in my humble experience, increase the speed of mastery by increasing the risk of experience. So if you want to be really good at something, it doesn't matter if you want to really be good at juggling in front of an audience. Juggling in front of an audience, that will sharpen your skill really quickly.
I've seen a post of you, by the way, taking a call and juggling.
That was one of
now I understand what it's doing.
That's one of my. Well, I have juggling balls. Most people come to my office. I have a whole load of toys in my office, and people come in and they always see juggling balls. So it's always fascinating. They go, can we have a play with the juggling balls? And it's like, yes, go for it.
You have to. I'm just reflecting exactly what you're saying on my experience now in the podcast. It's been since October. And I've never imagined myself even speaking to a mic or even on the camera. But the only thing that I like basically is that the public speaking.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, let me give it a shot in the sense that I knew that there will be a lot of friction at the beginning, but the moment I stepped into it, of course, I know that a lot of things can be always improved, but the fact that the moment you finish this traction phase at the beginning, you started to notice that, no, it is improving. Things are becoming much easier, becoming more spontaneous. Where exactly what you're saying that by time, I wouldn't say the 10 hours, but at least the practice of something, and you notice that you're improving, this is where the motivation comes in. Where
It's kind of, it's really weird. So it's that kind of doing and then reflecting and then doing and then reflecting. It's really weird.
This is what I love, the fact that you said being and doing.
Yeah, there's you know, being something. I mean, I talk about knowing, doing, and being, right? So being is just, you know, for me, being is utter mastery. You know, when you watch someone being, for me, it looks completely seamless. Try to think about how you can be better at what you're doing, and actually, the more you get exposure to it, the more you practice doing those podcasts or those sessions or whatever it is. Don't shy away from it. However good or bad it is, that's going to be a great experience for you. And you reflect on that experience, and you go away and you think, right, okay, what kind of went well in that session, what didn't go so well in that session, how do we kind of learn from that? But it's every single time you're talking to a guest, a customer in front of you. I've dealt with, you know, tens of thousands of complaints in my life. I often think, well, when you're dealing with a complaint, okay, so sometimes it's going to go to plan, but at the end of it, try to reflect on the experience, right? That would be a top tip for me. When you do something, try to reflect on it. Okay, so that was good, that was bad. Where could I be better next time? You're only really competing against yourself.
It's well put, and of course now with the social media, it's creating like kind of like the comparison mode all the time, just trying to, I wouldn't say replicate, but trying to overcome or to compete with someone who's doing the same as you, which is, it's quite dangerous. But I like the way you put it, is that if you are improving every day 1% of what you're doing with what you've done yesterday, actually, that's a very good progression. But we're gonna tap into the kind of like generational thinking, and especially that you are in the right field of what's happening now. That being authentic now and natural, it's becoming more an attractive attribute instead of being taking the right position or presenting yourself in a different way. Even now with the podcast experience, I decided not to edit anything and keep it natural, because what I realized from the basic and humble learning that people appreciate this more than having a proper production and editing. And no, keep it natural, as if we're talking in the cafe, as simple as this. On the point of generation, and I think it's really interesting to see now, based on your experience, how things are moving, especially in that field. I'm not talking, of course, only the corporate side, but at least from life, how people are looking to the corporate world, how they are taking seriously their work or their basically skills. What are the differences? Because the good thing from Generation X, Millennials, and now with the Gen Z, and of course with the digital basically movement now, what's your perspective on this and how things are taking shape?
I think it's weird. I've spoken at quite a few big forums, not least like, you know, sort of British government over the last few years about this topic, and they've kind of asked me to come in and speak. I spoke at the House of Commons in the UK and I spoke at the House of Lords in the UK around these topics, and it was quite fascinating. But what was really interesting was, you know, Generation X people who are kind of like talking to me, their perception of how you know, future generations are kind of learning has significantly shifted, because I suppose I come from a generation where it was kind of chalk and talk. You know, there would be a perceived expert, you know, the teacher, the educator, who would be passing some you know, words of wisdom onto a future generation so that they could use them. I would seriously challenge who the expert is in the room, because I still think that there's incredible value in getting different perspectives, because we tend to be more effective if we understand different perspectives. And I also think, so who really is the expert? It would be my kind of question. The expert is probably the person who's doing the job. That's very important.
Yes.
Because, and I say that because they're probably the person who has can make the right decision about doing something. Very simple kind of tip for me. It's just really, really, sometimes people really struggle with this, is that if you allow people to make decisions, I obviously have, we touched on this a few minutes ago, I have a kind of like a bank of experience, and I know that some things will work better than other things, yeah, but I've learned by making mistakes and having some terrible experiences that probably won't work.
Yeah.
However, if I just give Saf the answer, right, he's never going to really learn from that experience, and he doesn't really understand it. I would say it's a bit like riding a bike. If people want to do things, if someone comes to me and says, I really want to, let's use the example of a bicycle.
Yeah.
I want to learn to ride a bicycle, or I want to swim. Yeah, then it's a much easier game, because when it doesn't quite go to plan, if they're kind of like they struggle with the swimming or they fall off the bicycle, inevitably there's going to be some form of embarrassment. Maybe they're going to get themselves a little bit hurt by doing that. But actually, the only person they can blame is themselves. If I force an individual to do something, I'm going to force you to go swimming, or I'm going to force you to, to go cycling or whatever it is. And I've never not really had any interest in using a bike, or not really interested in swimming. But it's really good for you. You'll be much better. You're going to be much healthier. If you learn to swim, you're going to be much safer. Yeah, but I don't really want to do it. I know, but I'm more mature. I know more about it than you do. So ultimately, people go, oh, okay, well, I'll just do it then. But when it doesn't work out for them, as they're kind of like struggling in the water, or they fall off the bike, which they inevitably will do, as they're going through that kind of thought process, they're going to say, well, Andrew made me do that. Andrew forced me to do that. I hate Andrew. I told him I didn't want to do this.
Is this like a victim mentality?
Yeah. So people didn't. So we have to be just really trying to tap into people's what they want to do, what they want to learn.
Okay.
I think that's really important. For me, there's two areas I believe that we really kind of play the game of learning and development and helping people grow, and those two areas really are accessibility to it.
Yeah.
So making learning really easy and really accessible, and hence my kind of conversations with the House of Lords and the Commons in the UK was really about kind of micro learning. So making learning really, really simple,
accessible and easy to
accessible and easy to consume. And if you think about YouTube now, views on YouTube, if you take all the views on YouTube in 2022 and you compare that to all the views of people watching all other television programs, terrestrial TV, kind of like Sky, all those kind of non-pause TV, actually there's 3 times more viewing was consumed through YouTube than was consumed through just watching kind of terrestrial TV.
Yeah,
right?
And still in growth trajectory.
And still massively growth.
True.
Because people, they want to be able to go into things and, sort of push pause and rewind, and push pause and rewind, and push pause and rewind. When we started our little project, I do quite a lot of stuff on micro-learning, and when we started initially sort of like playing with micro-learning as a concept, we actually set ourselves a target that we wouldn't make anything longer than 3 minutes. And when I was explaining this to my friends at the House of Lords, they were completely shocked by that. And I was halfway through trying to explain the situation to them, and I got interrupted, and they were saying, well, it's ridiculous, Stott. So they're judging me, but they're saying it's ridiculous, because how can anyone learn anything in 3 minutes? Yeah. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, maybe I am being ridiculous. I said, we are from the same generation. Honestly, what we know from data is, people don't tend to watch videos after about 30 seconds, right? So if you really want to
You disconnect.
They disconnect, right? So 25 to 30 seconds is where people start disconnecting. So honestly, you're better off trying to keep it to 30 seconds.
True.
And actually breaking things down. So if you've got this wisdom you want to pass on to the next generation, the best way of doing that isn't writing a book or a big manual on how to be a better human. The better way of doing it is recording it in very simple 30-second chunks, and then letting people kind of watch it and digest it, and then refresh and go back. Right? And it's amazing how much information you can share in 30 seconds.
When it comes to again, I'm really fascinated with the concept of being and doing, but I will add to the mix the mental health element to it. And how do you add this with the curriculum that you provide on how you regulate, or basically how your mental wellness goes along with the things that you do in life?
It's absolutely, it's the absolute essence of being human. And the problem with mental health for me is you can't really see it, right? And it's a constant challenge for me. We talk a lot about resistance and resilience, and people being tough, and in my culture anyway, we talk about sort of manning up, and being a man and being tough and that kind of stuff. And that's not particularly healthy. And we do a lot of work with, there's a company called AQR, and I do a lot of stuff with MTQ, so sort of mental toughness quotient, and we look at individuals' mental toughness and their ability to be resilient and to do. my old CEO, you know, love him to bits. He was always talking about, you know, it's really important for him that people were resilient. So we were then kind of measuring resilience, and then we were getting a lot of stuff back saying that this bit, they're on a scale of 1 to 10, their resilience level is like a 9 or a 10, which is amazing. But actually, that's actually quite, in my humble experience, that's quite dangerous, because if I'm really, what we definitely know is if I'm really hard and I tend to ignore all of my emotions and my feelings because I'm just tough and I'm hard and I'm a man and I'm going to basically try and get the what, you know, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to own this. What happens is that you tend to like just have a kind of like a snapping point.
True.
You're much better off if you're on a kind of like a 5 or 6 for me for resilience, because you should be able to recognize when you are getting stressed. The problem is that if you break your leg or you scratch your back or you cut yourself, or you know, you can sort of see it, right? And when, you know, unfortunately with things like mental health and mental well-being, you can't really see it. Yeah, the more that we talk about being human, the more that we talk about how we feel in a given situation, how we are being, why it's so important to be like that, why we're asking people's opinions openly, getting them to really feel safe. Yeah, feel safe. Yeah. I think that's a big issue. And I'm an expat. I've been an expat for, you know, a long time now. And I think one of the big challenges of being an expat is just that piece around psychological safety. You know, because we live in a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. I mean, I was sort of joking about this the other day. I genuinely cannot tell. I mean, I just love living. I live in Abu Dhabi. I live on Yas Island. It is, you know, for me, paradise on earth. Right? So it's beautiful. Yeah. But there is definitely that. The psychological safety of kind of, I'm old enough now, and I'm not massively financially constrained, so it's not such a big deal for me. But I'm conscious that some, you know, definitely younger generations, they're moving into this kind of space, and the safety of being able to voice their concerns or share their opinions, because they think, well, if I upset somebody, then maybe perhaps I'm going to be on a boat home, or I'm going to be on a plane home. Yeah, you know. So we have to be able to make it safe for people. They have to feel that they can express their emotions. They have to feel that they can be authentic, genuine when they come to work. They're not playing a part. Yeah. We should be, I'm weird. You know, I'm openly admitting to being weird, right? But in what sense? Well, weird that I like being different. I like being unusual. Yeah. I really pride myself on being authentic and genuine. It's who I am. Right, not playing a part. I don't want to be someone else. I don't want to be anyone else. I want to be me, and I want to do it kind of my way. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not so good. But I don't really care. I just feel that I want to. I feel that it will filter a lot of people around you. That okay, some people they will be attracted to this kind of mindset, and some people they are okay. I cannot be involved with him, but. I fully agree with you. Sometimes, I don't know if it comes by wisdom or when you grow. Did this come with you when basically we were growing up? Because I started to feel it, okay, I can be authentic, but I don't have to put any kind of like a facade or like interface to please others. It becomes like a burden on me now. It's becoming, I'd rather act as I'm comfortable with. Yeah, I think to be fair, I think I've been a bit weird for quite a long time, if I'm honest. And I've become weirder or more comfortable being weird as I've got older. But I've always been a bit weird. But I think that's almost like a superpower of mine, being a bit weird. I was going to ask you about how are you using this weirdness? Yeah, I think I think people just. Sometimes it kind of like repels people because people, as you said, they go, they're uncomfortable with that. But actually, I ask myself, well, what are they really uncomfortable with? Are they uncomfortable with being honest? Are they uncomfortable with being just being who I want to be? And unfortunately for me, I do. When I see that recoil, because sometimes people do recoil, and it's visible recoil. That is. Unfortunately, not a good thing to do. So, a top tip: if you ever come into contact with me and you find me incredibly weird, don't recoil, because you're going to get a lot more weirdness. Because I pick up on that. Because human beings, there's that 97-3 thing that I always talk about. So, most of our communication is done non-verbally, right? True. So I pick up, and when I'm watching you, I mean, people say, I say, how do you hear the world? with my ears. Well, no, you don't hear the world with your ears. You hear the world with your eyes, right? What you're seeing the world. You're seeing it around you. Yeah, you'll be able. It's amazing how much you can read from another person.
Activating the five senses.
Yeah, really kind of getting in amongst it. So, and I tend to be a bit naughty, really. And do I want to be? Yeah, I'm happy with being naughty. So if I see people recoiling, I tend to then go. It's almost not.
Poke them.
Yeah, it's not poke. Yeah.
Like to know him better. Yeah.
Because and sometimes they kind of they suddenly sort of like they go, oh, I think I quite like you because of that. As I said, it's back to my earlier comment. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And what's interesting because you were made me feel very very embarrassed earlier about that kind of HR
Absolutely
thing.
not.
But the HR thing, and that was interesting for me because I had literally people phoning me up, people WhatsApping me, people emailing me from like 35, 40 years ago, right? So that was the weirdest thing for that whole thing, that whole kind of like, that publicity. And Mark Colburn, we love you very much. So obviously kind of really sort of jumped on that, and it got loads of went kind of a bit viral really, which is lovely. But what was fascinating was the people from my past who were kind of like phoning me, emailing me, WhatsApping me, LinkedIn messaging me, saying, oh my gosh, I remember you when you were like 18, right? I remember you when you were like 20.
Amazing.
And you were my manager when you were like 20 or 21. And it was just, I just really liked working with you. And I was kind of like perplexed. I was like I can't even believe you know who I am. That's amazing. How's that happened? And then people don't forget, they will never forget how you make them feel, right? And that's the fundamental for me. It's if you make people feel good about themselves, it leaves a lasting impression. My dad passed away at the beginning of 2022. Very, very, it was an absolute. It's been devastating, if I'm honest, for me. But he kind of always said there's kind of like for me there was sort of really 4 values that I really picked up from him, and that definitely that respecting people. So for a very short while, I mean the first one was really respecting everyone and being really kind of open to that, and we're not different, we're unique. Right, I think that's a dangerous word, right? So if I say that because we're different, but that's a dangerous word. I think we're unique, and if we treat people as being unique and special, and they have different perspectives, and they bring something to the party, right? So we're probably, and I've got a very good friend who is a professor at Harvard, and I love him as well, and he occasionally works along. I've known him for about 30 years now, and occasionally I work with him, and he gets very agitated where people, particularly when he comes to the sort of Middle Eastern cultures, he's obviously he lives in Maine, and he gets frustrated because people are, you don't really understand us, doctor, you don't really understand us, you don't really understand too much about the culture, and then he kind of like snaps and says, hang on a second, whoa. He looks at it, he goes, do you have a spleen? Yeah, and they sort of, yes, I have a spleen. Okay, you have lungs, you have a heart, you have blood pumping through your veins. Yes, I have all of those things. Excellent. So we're 99.99999% more similar.
Absolutely.
Than we're different.
The 1% is the difference in the.
Yeah, and when there's a little bit of uniqueness. Let's encourage the uniqueness. So my dad said, respect everyone, give them your undivided respect. I was in the Merchant Navy. One of the things that wound me up massively in my short period in the Merchant Navy was always, senior. I was a very senior officer, but we'd have officers who would, we'd be chatting and they say, well, he needs or she needs to earn her stripes, or he needs to earn his stripes.
Okay.
Right? No one needs to earn their stripes. For me, I just give people respect.
Yeah.
No one has to earn my respect. Why would you have to earn my respect? And so that was really, really important. You can of course lose my respect. I'm not saying you can't lose it, but you don't have to earn my respect. I will give you it free, 100% all the time. So respect people is very important. Nobody really gets past me without a good morning or good afternoon. So acknowledging people, just seeing people is really important. So respecting and seeing, I think most underused skill. I did a great session yesterday in the podcast about the menopause, and we were trying to look for tips for men to help ladies who are going through the menopause. And the big thing for that was just hearing people, listening to people. We've got to get better as humans. We've got to get better at listening. So, but again, my dad said, let's respect them. Let's see them. Let's really hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
The hearing and listening. I was going to tap into this
really
point.
fascinating. Yeah, and then finally, just never underestimate remembering, because if you remember about them and you bring that back into the conversation, it's really powerful. So if you can literally literally respect everyone, no questions
Mm-hmm.
asked, respect who they are. Let's not be too judgmental. Appreciate that you do judge. That's fine. We have to just be kind of conscious of judging. So, but that's really important for me. So, literally just respecting and seeing people, hearing people, and remembering people, four really important skills.
How Andrew is maintaining his knowledge now? Of course, you have an experience, but are you basically read books, refer to like new kind of approaches, especially now with the new generation, or?
I'm first of all, an absolute news hound. So there's two newspapers that I read every day.
Mm-hmm.
They may be familiar with some people. One is, you'll laugh at this one. One is The Sun, which is a very tabloid, and it gives a very different perspective. Both papers I read are quite conservative. They have a slightly conservative view. Some people are laughing. We're probably laughing. Very conservative view of the world. So I read every day the Telegraph, literally cover to cover, for multiple reasons. And I also read The Sun, cover to cover every day. And they both publish 7 days a week, which is great. The interesting thing about there's two very different perspectives on the world, which is useful.
Okay.
But it also helps me with a lot of when I'm listening and creating conversation with people, because often there will be, it's either be it current affairs or politics or sport. If you're very in touch with kind of what's happening, it doesn't matter if it's football games or rugby games or cricket games or whatever type of sport it is, it's normally in the paper, or there's some sort of political event going on around the world.
Yeah.
That's a really rich source of information, and I've kind of really learned from that. I also love the HBR stuff, the Harvard Business Review.
Yeah.
For me, that's excellent. I love that. I'm a huge fan of Blinkist, so I'm not sure if you've ever heard. There's a really good app called Blinkist.
It summarizes the books.
It summarizes the books. That's a really fantastic tool as well. Not one single day. Like I said, my go-to really is obviously the Telegraph and the Sun, because it just gives me a really good perspective. I also think that as an educator, one of the best ways of learning is to actually teach it. A few years ago, I was asked. It was in the Middle East, and we had a big challenge with developing negotiation skills.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd gone out, and the organisation had gone and tried to find a vendor to deliver negotiation skills for these senior leaders in the organisation. And I remember the organisation I was working for at the time was just said, "This is ridiculous. We're not going to pay that kind of money for an external vendor. You can teach negotiation."
Okay.
And I just remember sitting there going, "Oh gosh, this is really out of my comfort zone," because I just no idea. I have no idea about negotiation. So they said, "Well, they were like, no, well, tough. You're going to have to do it." So if I sort of find a way, so I was like, "Okay, fine." So I said, "Well, how long have I got?" And it was probably about 6 weeks. They booked the course, and they had all these senior executives coming in to learn about negotiation from me, and we were going to do a 5-day workshop with them on negotiation, and they were like negotiators by trade. I mean, these guys were negotiating like $1 million deals, either leasing property, or it was kind of like a lot of retail and stuff. And I was thinking, oh gosh, this is an absolute nightmare. So I spent pretty much every waking moment for 6 weeks learning how to be a negotiator.
Okay.
So I read every single text.
Did you read the Split the Difference?
Yeah, Split the Difference. Ooh,
Right.
I was
He's
just
my framework.
Yeah, just
Absorbing him.
Beautiful point of it's a beautiful point of reference. So I read so many books, and then I remember the first day of that workshop thinking, "Oh, this is going to be a disaster." And and then I actually did the classic, and I said to them, "Right, so what I want you to do, I'll put your names on a flip chart, and I'm going to ask you to put, on a scale of 1 to 10, how great a negotiator are you?"
Okay.
Yeah. And you have to kind of put a line next to your name, either 1 to 10. And I swear to you now, it was an absolute nightmare, because they all kind of went 9 and 10. Right.
Okay.
And I was thinking, this is day one of a 5-day workshop. 8 hours a day, 5 days, for 5 days, learning to be better negotiators. And they were all kind of going with 10, which I think is interesting because then straight away I would have questions around self-awareness. Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Because I think sometimes
How much do you know yourself?
Yeah, some people tend to overrate it. And then we went, so then I was really thinking, this is am I going to make it to lunch on the first day? Because they're going to kill me. But anyway, lunch came and went, dinner came and went, next day came and went. And we went through this course, and of course it was just really fascinating. And at the end of the 5 days, I got the flip chart back out again. And it was the only time in my entire career where people had actually gone back in their knowledge or gone back in their awareness of something. So they'd moved from like a 10 to a 6. And I said, well, why did you've actually, so you're saying you've lost information around, you've actually lost information about how to be a good negotiator. And they were like, no, we haven't lost information. We were just so unaware, unconsciously incompetent in our ability to negotiate. Now suddenly we kind of realised where we need to be as negotiators when we're working with people. So actually I was really proud of that. But that learning has really served me well in my life, because being a much better negotiator, because I think it's a really important skill. Negotiating is a critical skill. There's some golden rules around negotiation.
I wrote a small post last time about the negotiation, how it's important, especially when you become basically a family guy, where you have to negotiate with the wife, with the kids, with everyone. So it is a required skill. Everyone underestimates it. So it's really important to practice it. I'm going to ask you a typical question. Where do you see yourself after like a couple of years? Because you've been in a fascinating journey in that space. What's next for you?
I'm going to continue to learn. I think that's a really important thing. So I'm definitely on a continuous learning journey. I'm getting close to retirement. So probably got another couple of years on me. I want to definitely I've got some big projects kind of planned as I go into retirement. I want to definitely circumnavigate the world with my wife. That's important. I will continue to, I'll probably do a lot more writing. I think that's going to be really important. A lot more kind of work on that side. I've got this big dream. I've never even been. This is a scary thought. I've got this big dream of kind of owning a camper van and then driving around the entire coast of Europe.
Oh, that's nice.
Kind of blogging about that. But what's scary is I've never been on a camper van in my life. I've never spent one single night.
Going back to the point, like, experience it. You never know.
You never know. So as part of that, so my wife and I are going to Australia at the end of April, and we're going to we've hired a camper van in Australia. And we're going to go up the coast from Melbourne to Sydney in the camper van. And I have to say I'm somewhat terrified about that. I'm terrified about it primarily because if I get in the camper van and I hate it, which is
what's next?
What's next? Not so much what's next for the next 14 nights, because that's easy. I just park the camper van and go and stay in a hotel. That's not the issue at all. But it's what's next as far as my entire life, because it was like
it's a journey. Experience it, and I think you'll explore a lot of things along the way.
And who you meet, right? It's who you meet on the journey.
That's true.
And just just trying to. I just feel that it's. You've got to get out there and try and. I mean, I'm so privileged with my travelling and my working and the people I've met, which has been amazing, really. So just a bit more of that, if I'm honest. And,
No, I'm sure you will figure it out, because you have the know-hows. So I don't think it's a problem for you to connect and figure out the next step. Just go with the flow, enjoy it.
Yeah, no, and again back to that. Be authentic, be weird. I am weird, and I think that's just keep leveraging that weirdness. That hasn't done me that much harm so far in my career.
Absolutely not. As I told you at the beginning, people they prefer this kind of like mindset, because it's always like put a lot of pressure socially to be yourself. And I think you're a genuine person. I've interacted with you with the basic stuff. Your LinkedIn picture it describes you very well, which I love it. Like, okay, and again, I can when I dropped you a message, you instantly replied back to me. So I really appreciate that. So.
That goes for anyone. I mean, literally, if anyone ever wants me, they need me, they want some advice, want some help or guidance, I don't really give advice, but I can definitely share lots of resources, lots of tools to kind of really try and help people. I think it's back to people, they never forget how you make them feel. That's important.
Yeah.
That photo on LinkedIn gets a lot of it polarizes people, because a lot of people hate that photo and say you shouldn't have that photo. You know, it's not professional. You really shouldn't have the picture. You should take that picture down. You should have your suit and your tie on, and you know, and other people, it's the most refreshing. We love that photograph. So you know, there's a real kind of like war going on with some of my followers who think I should be more professional and sharp.
I don't, even now before the podcast you asked me to put the time. It's like, no, it's like I want to like, because I really like the interaction as you are, and you mentioned that you're weird, so
I should be sitting in a duck suit or something, you know.
but Andrew, I cannot get enough from this conversation. I learned a lot, of course, with such an experience. And where people can, when can people find you?
Well, obviously LinkedIn is apps, and I'm very, very serious. I mean, I also have a massive following on. I send like a broadcast every morning to about 10,000 people. So if anyone wants to join that, please feel free. I'll connect you to that now in a couple of minutes, and you can, if you want to kind of share that link and stuff, please let me know.
I will do for sure.
So that's a big piece of what we do every morning. We get, you know, 10,000 people get like the morning wake up call. It's not mandatory. It's not anyone can leave. You know, I say to anyone, just leave. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, there's no chatter, because it's just one way traffic.
Okay.
We send people information. You can, if you want, put a little heart on it, which you get lots of hearts and stuff. I'm a bit of my wife calls me Heart Man, so I get a lot of. I'm a bit sort of over generous with my heart emojis.
I noticed, but I love it. Okay.
I think my wife's given up.
My wife got jealous, like.
Who's giving you all those hearts?
But Andrew, again,
share the love.
Thank you very much for coming to this show. I really appreciate your time, and definitely we're gonna keep in touch, because I like this engagement, and I definitely looking forward to see you again.
Your servant. Anything.
Amazing. Thank you everyone for tuning in and for watching. Special thanks for my son who's helping me on the podcast production. If you want to support the show, follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and safwanalturk.com. Get your switch on. Andrew, thank you very much.
It's lovely to be here.
Appreciated. Thank you.